So the next one is very similar to the example that we finished the last video with. So if you feel confident about your way of getting through this, then go ahead and try it on your own, and then you can check to see what the answer is, kind of speed ahead in the video. But otherwise, you can stay with me here and I'll walk you through it. So once again, we're aiming to write an equation in y equals mx plus b format. And so we've got to identify what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. So this time, the y-intercept is not the origin, but it's up here at 18. So I'm going to write b down as 18. And we should take note that the balance is in thousands of dollars, so that's really 18,000. But it's okay if we just leave it as 18, and then we just have to remember to multiply by 1,000, whatever answer we get later on when we're using our equation. And then for the slope, we've got any number of options. We can start from the point here at 0, 18, and then use this 10, 15 as our second point. We can see there's a bunch of other locations where we can pretty easily identify where the graph travels through the defined point and use those coordinates. But I'm going to go ahead and use these two here, so that 0, 18 and that 10, 15 to calculate my slope. So for the rise, we're going down. So I'm going from a y-coordinate of 18 to a y-coordinate of 15. So we're going down 3, so that's going to be negative 3. But then horizontally, we're moving from 0 to 10. So my run is going to be 10. So we've got negative 3/10. Then again, for graphing purposes, writing it as a fraction is probably a good idea. But perhaps because of the context of here, we're going to be talking about money and thousands of dollars. It might make sense to change this to a decimal. So if we hopefully recognize that 3/10 is 0.3. So together we got the slope, negative 0.3 times x, and then plus b, so plus 18. So there's our equation for this problem. So, like on the last one, we want to try to figure out what that slope represents. So if we go back to what originally it looked like, so negative 3/10. So we want to make sure that we get the units. That will help us with our interpretation of what that negative 0.3 means. And so the numerator was thousands of dollars, while the denominator was keeping track of the number of payments. Or in other words, we're going down by negative 3,000 divided by 10 per payment, or if we see it as this negative 0.3, it's going to be negative 0.3 thousand dollars per payment. But I don't think anyone would ever really write it that way. So 0.3 thousand is really 300. So what's really happening here is we're going down $300 per payment. So our loan balance is decreasing by $300 every single time we make a payment. So again, writing the units down here like I did can be a little bit helpful for us in terms of interpreting what that slope means. That can oftentimes be the trickiest part of these types of questions. But if we move on from there, so the question says, after how many payments will the loan be paid, halfway paid off? In this case, we could really interpret that information from the graph. If we kind of clean up the graph here a little bit, and if we look at our graph, we're starting off at a height of 18, so we're going to be halfway paid off when we're at 9. And so if I just kind of move across the graph, I can see that that's going to be after 30 payments. So we're kind of lucky that we can read it off the graph, but if we weren't so lucky, we'd have to use our equation that we have here. Well, to use that equation, if I want to know how many payments I'll have to make in order to get to the halfway point, so the halfway point would be, in place of y, I would only owe $9,000, so 9 equals negative 0.3x plus 18. So then we can just go ahead and solve, subtract 18 from both sides. We get negative 9 equals negative 0.3x. And so then just divide both sides by negative 0.3, And so if we push buttons on our calculator on that one, we end up with 30 payments, which confirms what we read off of the graph. And then for the last bit here, how much will be left on the loan after 20 payments? Well, that's a little bit more straightforward. We're just going to plug 20 in for x and see what we get. So we get y equals negative 0.3 times 20 plus 18. So if we just push buttons on our way through on that, so 0.3 times 20, we're going to get negative 6 plus 18, and so we get 12 as our answer for y, but we have to remember that's in thousands, so it's going to be $12,000 that we still owe. And again, we could have gone back to our graph, looked at 20 as being the number of payments. If we move up and look at where the line is at that point, we can indeed see that we are at $12,000.